Okay, now that we have data in a database, let's talk about how we can get it out and actually use it. Because if we just store it there and we never actually pull it out and use it and make decisions based on that data, we really haven't accomplished much, right? So that's what the select clause does in SQL, is we use that to extract data out of a database and or the select statement. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Now, just to give you a heads up, there are a bunch of options with the select statement. Rather than making one long video, I'm going to try to break it up into several shorter videos, and we're going to add different components to that select statement, different options to that select statement with each video. And hopefully that'll make it easier for people to jump to what they want. Okay, now before I do this, I'm going to create an ER diagram because that's going to show me how my database fits together. And for this particular video, I want to work with the world database. So I'm going to go to database, and we covered how to do this in a previous video. So I'm just going to run through it real quick and generate the ER diagram without a lot of commentary. I want world. And here is our ER diagram, and then I'm going to move things up here so that they actually all show up at one point. Now, or at the same screen. So the ER diagram is going to show me the tables that I have and the columns or the fields that are in those tables. So I've got in the world database, I've got a city table with the ID, the name, the character or the country code, the district, and the population. I've got a country with a code, name, continent, region, surface area, you get the idea, and a country language. Now I can reference back to this to see which data I want to work for, or where the data is, there we go, where the data is that I want to get to, what I have, how do I find it. This is going to be that reference guide for me. So let's get into our select. Now before we do a select, we need to use a use. So the use statement tells SQL which database we want to pull data from. So I'm going to do use world, and I'm going to end that with a semicolon. Now, all SQL statements should be ended with a semicolon. If you're only doing a single statement, it's actually not that big of a deal. It'll run just fine without it. But best practice is to go ahead and do it. And if you have multiple commands, multiple SQL statements, then you're definitely going to need to use that to separate them. So in this case, I'm going to do two. I'm going to use world, and then I've already seen here in my ER diagram which fields are in my table. I want to work with the city table here. It'll show me which fields are in my table, but it's not going to show me what actual content is in there. So that's where the select comes in handy. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do select, and then I'm going to specify when I want to select. And in this case, I just want to see everything. We'll filter this down in a minute. So I'm going to select asterisk from city and close it with a semicolon. And what that says is use the world database, and then inside the world database, you're going to find the table city, and you're going to select everything. So the select, this is the information I want from, is the table where it's going to be stored at. So I hit my execute, and there we go. Now you'll notice this is limited to 1,000 rows. And if you look down here in the action output, and by the way, you can grab these little vertical resizers to resize what you want. I'm going to give myself a little more room in the results, a little less on the output. But in the output, you'll see use world. It didn't affect any rows, but it was successful. And select asterisk from city. And you'll see we have a limit here of 1,000. So it only return my first 1,000 rows. And that's here where it says 1,000 rows affected. If I want to change that, I can change that here and do more or less. Okay, now the select asterisk gives me everything. That's not the best way to do it. But it does give you a quick look at what the table looks like and what type of information it holds. So that's my select asterisk. Notice it gives me the columns in table order. So in my table, ID, name, country code, district, population. When I did the select asterisk, ID, name, country code, district, population. Now this is probably not the best way to select data. We are normally going to want to filter and control the data that comes out, and using select asterisk really isn't that efficient anyway. So I'm going to erase my query up here, and I'm going to select just the data that I want. So I don't need the ID. So I'm going to skip that. I do want the name, and I want the country code, and I want the district, but I don't need the population anymore, or at the moment. Not anymore, but at the moment I don't need the population, so I'm just going to leave that off. So that what I end up with is select name, country code, and district. I'm going to go down to the next line, and I'm going to say from city, semicolon. Now, I could put this on the same line. It would work just fine. But by breaking this down into multiple lines, it's just going to make it a little easier for us to read and work through. So I'm going to execute, and that gives me name, country code, and district in the order that I specified. Now notice these are not capitalized, and that's because up here I didn't capitalize them. But if I come back through and I capitalize, and I want to capitalize the C in country and the C in code and the D in district, and you'll notice as I'm doing this, the workbench keeps popping up trying to be helpful. I tend to ignore that, by the way, but some people find it helpful. So now I'm going to execute, and you'll see now I have the capitals, and that's because I specified in capital letters up here. It's not actually case sensitive. It'll work either way, but it is case aware, and it will display that. Now again, I'm putting these in database order. This is the order they're stored in the database. If I want them in a different order, then I just need to change it around. Let's say I wanted the country code first, and then I wanted the city or the name, and then I wanted the district. And I can execute it, and now it'll come out in that order. Okay, so this is the basic select clause. Select is what we use to get data out of the database. And the minimal things that are required are select and from. Select, put the information you want. From, tell it the table you want the information to come out of. And that's basically all it takes for running a really, really basic select statement. Now, as we continue on in our next series of videos, we're going to add some more information like how to filter data using criteria, how to do calculations, how to do computed, I couldn't think of the word for a minute, computed columns. So we're going to talk about several of those things in our next several videos. So if you want to go deeper with the select clause, make sure you check those out.